Representative Deb Haaland of the 1st District of New Mexico made history in 2018 by being one of the first Native American congresspeople ever elected to the United States Congress. And I want to introduce Representative Deb Haaland right now.
Thank you so much, Zerlina. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And hello, Netroots. You know, I feel sad that I can't be there in person also, but I'm so happy to be here. And I thank Netroots for inviting me and for the powerful, powerful work that Netroots is doing. As a Pueblo woman and a 35th generation New Mexican, I grew up in a culture that welcomes everyone and shares what we have. A culture in which we support each other in times of need so everyone thrives. I learned to carry on the legacy of environmental stewardship of countless generations who came before me. During the summers, I'd spend time with my grandparents and I'd go out to the field with my grandpa to irrigate and pick worms off of the corn. It was there that I learned how we are all connected to the earth and how everything on this planet is connected. We rely on each other. We rely on the water and the land to grow our food, the air to fill our lungs, and nature to keep all of that intact. Each ancestor had taken seriously their responsibility to pass on our natural treasures and a livable planet to future generations. When I ran for Congress, I made climate change central to my campaign, and I'm serious about taking action. I refuse to take donations from corporate PACs or the fossil fuel industry. I focus my time on climate change because it's the greatest challenge of our time. It's our responsibility to protect our planet. It's the connection to our earth that sustains us. And right now, it's the desecration of our planet that keeps our communities from thriving. One thing that I've learned in Congress is that even those of us with the best intentions can have a hard time turning proposals into effective policies that get enacted, especially with an administration who is hell-bent on selling public lands to the highest bidder and lining their pockets, and a Senate leader who puts corporate interests and polluters ahead of the people. But we have to answer the question, are we going to continue with the status quo, or are we going to build a future where every community can thrive? Big structural change is hard to achieve, but we can never, ever give up. Right now, our country is facing crises that are fatefully intertwined. Tens of millions of people are unemployed. The COVID-19 pandemic rages on. Racial and economic injustice are rampant. And the climate crisis is accelerating. And we have an incompetent president in the White House. The pandemic has put a spotlight on the legacy of environmental racism and injustice that leaves frontline communities far more susceptible to the disease than others. In New Mexico, Native Americans make up less than 11% of our population, but are more than half of the coronavirus cases. Across the country, Native Americans and Black Americans have a COVID-19 hospitalization rate 5 times that of white people, and Hispanic individuals are hospitalized at a rate that is 4 times of whites. Why is that? Because for years, powerful elites have treated some communities as sacrifice zones and disposable. Years of exposure to radiation from uranium mining, like at my own Laguna Pueblo, nuclear weapons testing and methane leakage from oil and gas drilling causes a poisonous cloud to hover over the Navajo Nation right here in my state. Meanwhile, pollution in Cancer Alley in St. James Parish in Louisiana disproportionately affects the Black community. Immigrants and low-income residents in Miami's Little Haiti are being displaced because of sea level rise. And Black and Hispanic families suffer from the highest levels of air pollution in the country in Detroit. These injustices are mirrored across other communities nationwide and make them more susceptible to COVID-19, and it's costing people their lives. The inequitable workloads of women are increasing because women, particularly women of color, overwhelmingly make up the essential workforce, bearing the weight of increased needs of children, the elderly, and the sick. This pandemic has forced us to question what is essential and what we value as a country. The people who grow our food, stock the shelves of our grocery stores, and put themselves at risk to care for the health of our families are essential, not corporate CEOs and billionaires. This pandemic forces us to answer the question, are we going to continue with the status quo, or are we going to build a future where every community can thrive? For me, this is a moment of truth, to follow through on the commitments I have made and turn them into effective progressive policies. Addressing the economic crisis and mass unemployment is going to require major investments, and we can do it in a way that targets the legacy of racial and economic injustice and takes on climate change. We have an opportunity to not just recover, but to thrive. This vision is at the core of who we are as progressives. And it's also the vision of Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate for president, and Kamala Harris, who's about to make history as the first African American vice president and the first woman in that office. I know they're committed to climate justice because they're engaging climate champions. I'm using my position on the Biden Climate Engagement Advisory Council to move progressive action on climate change forward, with the goal that no one gets left behind and we do right by our communities of color. I also work closely on the Democratic Platform Drafting Committee to strongly advocate for environmental justice so that our communities come back from this and thrive. Progressives know that this country needs a bold economic plan that will build a society that values dignified work, guarantees racial, economic, gender, and environmental justice, and a stable climate. So as the theme of this evening asks, how does the progressive movement make sure that when these policies are enacted, they are done so in the way that we want? We must create good, safe jobs where workers have access to unions and that they have strong organizing and bargaining rights. We must make sure that the jobs we create have strong labor standards, including wages and benefits that folks can raise a family on. That's why the Fight for 15 was so pivotal in creating the change we need to see. And now we have a bill that passed the House to raise the wage. Together, we can do the same thing to revolutionize our infrastructure, expand access to clean water, transportation, energy, and high-speed internet, and retrofit millions of homes, schools, and offices to cut pollution and costs. We can show everyone that we value public health, education, worker protections, livable wages and benefits for the historically underpaid, and undervalued work. We can protect and restore wetlands, forests, and public lands, clean up pollution in our communities, create opportunities for family farmers and rural communities, and promote domestic manufacturing of clean tech. We must insist that recovery invests in Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities to counteract racial and gender injustice, empowers those communities to implement their projects, and prioritizes local and equitable hiring and contracting. We must ensure healthy lives for all of us by cleaning up health hazards, replacing lead pipes, and ensuring equitable access to health care, especially in communities that have endured disproportionately high COVID-19 death rates. I'll tell you, the people who work in the fossil fuel industry, on the rigs, in the oil fields, they aren't the enemy. The corporations and special interests that take hold of our political structures and force dirty energy down the throats of those workers and poison our communities for the sake of profit are the enemy. We can bring those workers and communities who will be affected by our renewable energy revolution with us. We can ensure every family can thrive and help diversify local economies and find equitable job training and placement. We have to answer the question, are we going to continue with the status quo, or are we going to build a future where every community can thrive? As you know, no matter who controls the White House and Congress next year, powerful voices will try to influence the recovery plan. That's why it's so important for progressives to work from the grassroots up. Folks in Congress need to keep hearing about how the pandemic, unemployment, and climate change are impacting your lives and the lives of everyone in your communities. So alongside progressive groups from the grassroots up, I'm choosing to buck the status quo and work on a Thrive agenda to accomplish the vision I just described in the context of an urgently needed economic recovery. We need to let everyone know that we choose a proposal to change the direction and to be fierce. I'll keep pushing, but you need to keep giving politicians and other leaders the mandate that you want climate action now. This is a pivotal point in history when we can make bold changes and choose to protect our Earth. But we need to do it together. We need the voices of the people to back us up because it's going to be a fight. Let's be fierce and choose to thrive. Thank you so much, Zerlina. I am so happy to be with you.
I'm so happy to be here with you as well. I feel like this is a panel, this Friday night lineup is so baller, right? I mean, I feel like if this panel represents anything, it's women who are outspoken, who are strong, who come from all different backgrounds, and who are progressive, who are going to lead us to that next phase in this American experiment. And so I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Representative Haaland.